Hi, thanks for coming back to part 2 of The Naked Truth. If this is the first time you've seen this, please go back and find part 1 so that you can understand what I'm trying to accomplish with this video series. Thank you. At the end of the last video, part 1, I had mentioned Lawrence Lessig's book, The Republic Lost. In his book and in a follow-up book, he recommends that we publicly fund the congressional races to reduce the influence of special interests. I could partly agree with that to a certain extent. Other sites on the internet want to keep the terms down to 4 terms or less. That I cannot agree with. I recommend that we, for the next 10 years at a minimum, limit terms to just 1 term. Why? Because we need to discourage special interests from influencing our senators and representatives. If the senators and representatives aren't going to be there for the next term, the special interests will not waste money trying to get them reelected. No doubt they will find other ways to influence our senators and representatives, but 1-term limits is definitely a strong beginning. This would also discourage the practice in Congress of senators and representatives who have been there longer, claiming seniority and therefore taking control of various committees and exerting undue power. I want my representatives to have equal voting rights and power as well as all of the other representatives. The practice of selecting who runs for Congress also has to be changed. Within each representative district there are probably at a minimum 500 or more people who would qualify to run for Congress. The reason they don't is because of what Congress is right now. But if they were to see a change in how Congress is working, and knew that they would only have to be there for 1 term to accomplish something, then we would get a lot more highly qualified individuals running for Congress. As Ronald Reagan stated, one thing our founding fathers could not foresee was a nation governed by professional politicians who have a vested interest in getting reelected. They probably envisioned a fellow serving a couple of hitches and then looking forward to getting back to the farm. Or, as George Will stated, term limits would increase the likelihood that people who come to Congress would anticipate returning to careers in the private sector and therefore would, as they legislate, think about what it is like to live under the laws they make. Currently, I suspect that most politicians are selected by people with lots of money, with an interest in getting their people into Congress. These appear to be mostly lawyers or Harvard types, from elite colleges, people with connections. The way I think it should be done is that within each legislative district, the local people should encourage the folks within their communities who meet certain requirements to run for Congress. I would suspect that these would be people who are nonpartisan for the most part. They would be upstanding citizens within their community, small business owners, housewives, pastors, teachers, coaches, active community members, mill workers, truck drivers, etc., and local politicians who have been doing an outstanding job. Each legislative district should select a minimum of 5 to 10 of these people and let them gather together to have lively debates within their districts. This shouldn't cost them that much money to let the local people who are going to be voting to evaluate them. Several of those people could also run as senators statewide. This is where Lessig's idea of government funding of elections might fit in. The point is this: instead of having people run for office who have time and money or special interests or a vested interest or whatever, let the local people choose who will be running for office. The people who will oppose this, term limits, will give you all kinds of excuses why we should not be doing that. They will say we'll be losing experienced lawmakers. Well, I think the only experience these people will be losing is their experience in how to work the system to their advantage or advantage of the special interests. Others will say that with new people in office every 2 years or 6 years that they won't accomplish as much. That's great. We need fewer laws and we need better laws, and if that's what it takes to get it, so be it. One last thing before I finish. Any candidates that are running for office under the suggestions listed above should be asked to sign a document stating that if successful, their very first action will be to submit a bill of support or support any bills that support term limits as outlined above. There are many websites on the internet that are trying to accomplish the same thing I am. Downsize DC, the Project to Restore America, and many others. Check them out. There was also a site that I cannot remember that I found several months ago that actually does put out documents that state precisely what I was mentioning above, that elected officials can sign showing their intent to support the electorate. If you know who that is, please let me know and I will place it on here. Finally, think about this. If we can get a 67% turnover in both the House and in the Senate of candidates who have signed a document to enact term limits, then it should not matter who wins the presidency, as we will have a majority in both houses and we can control the president and stop all this insane spending that's going on. Number 2 on the list is we must change how Congress works. This is a highly complicated one and I cannot cover it completely. So what I'm going to do is just list a number of things I think we have to get through, and I'm sure you and many others could come up with many other items. I don't know how else to do this, but just to list the things that we need to do, and hopefully in the remarks you people will come up with additional ideas that I can incorporate into this video at a later date. The Atlanta Journal recently wrote, "The 10 Commandments contain 297 words. The Bill of Rights is stated in 463 words. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address contains 266 words. A recent federal directive to regulate the price of cabbage contains 26,911 words." The inside operation of Congress, the deals, the compromises, the selling out, the co-opting, the unprincipled manipulating, the self-serving career building, is a story of such monumental decadence, I believe that if people found out about it, they will demand an end to it. Bella Abzug. I'm just going to read this to you. Changing Congress. Any laws that they pass must cover one subject at a time, written in plain English, no longer than 10 pages long, and totally understandable with a person with a high school degree. No last-minute additions or addendums that are totally unrelated to the one subject will be allowed. No more pork barrel spending. They should have a short 1 to 5 sentence introduction that states the exact intent of the law and nothing else. This is to keep the lawyers off of it. The law has to meet the requirements of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, insofar as it does not intrude on states' rights. The law has to apply to the majority of U.S. citizens, meaning not special interests. However, for small groups of citizens, if there is to be a law passed benefiting them, it must not limit the rights or provide undue hardships on the rest of the population. Once the proposed bill has been approved by both the House and the Senate, they must publish it for the general population to review for a minimum of 60 days before voting on it. Before voting on a bill, each representative and senator must sign a statement stating that they have read the document and understand it and will vote on it with the best interests of their constituents and the nation in mind. The end of the bill must have a provision that any rules or regulations passed by any of the bureaucracies that are required to enact it have to be approved by Congress. Each bill must have a paragraph defining the expected cost of enforcing a law and a statement saying that it meets budget constraints or guidelines and will not require new taxes. Special interests and federal bureaucrats cannot meet with less than 10 senators or less than 10 representatives at a time. Any senator or representative who has been found to have met individually with a special interest or the bureaucrats will immediately lose his or her job. Any bill or law that requires an increase in the budget or new taxes or levies must be posted for 90 days on the internet before coming to the floor for a vote. The website for this bill or law must allow registered voters to vote yea or nay on it or leave comments or suggestions. Before the Secretary of State or any other member of the administration is allowed to negotiate with other countries or the United States nations or any other of its subsidiaries, they must notify the general public of their intent and what the negotiations are about, unless it is of national security, in which case a select committee of 10 senators and representatives will be informed. Both senators and representatives will be required to personally monitor and supervise the federal bureaucracies as assigned to each individual. Bills and laws honoring individuals or groups or assigning names to federal buildings will no longer be allowed. Every senator and representative will be required to be in attendance better than 95% of the time at all meetings requiring the entire assembly to vote. In Congress, accountability is just a catchphrase, usually directed elsewhere. Congressional demands for more personal responsibility and corporate accountability abound, but demands for more congressional accountability or fiscal responsibility are rare indeed. Anonymous. A democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until the voters discover that they can vote themselves money from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates promising the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that a democracy always collapses over loose fiscal policy, always followed by dictatorship. The average age of the world's greatest civilizations has been 200 years. Sir Alexander Fraser Tyler, Decline and Fall of the Athenian Republic. As you can see, this is a pretty complicated one here. There are many things that we can do to make Congress work more effectively and efficiently, and that's the intent of this part of the items, is that Congress can work more efficiently, more effectively, write better laws, write a lot fewer bad laws, be more responsible for what they do, monitor the bureaucracy that they've created, and just do an overall better job for the citizens of the U.S. So, after this comes number 3, personal income taxes, and number 4, corporate income taxes. I am going to save those for part 3 of The Naked Truth, because those are pretty intense. Thank you again for listening. If you have any comments, please comment below, and have a good day.